I will always remember the day my world fell apart. It began just like any other day. A typical Tuesday, marked by a flurry of work emails, Max's lackluster efforts on his homework, and the comforting drone of a coffee maker in the background. Everything appeared to be in order. No signs alerted me to the tempest gathering on the horizon. If I had been aware, perhaps I would have chosen a different path. But looking back, I question whether it would have made a difference. Certain calamities are unavoidable. As I lounged in the living room, perusing through bills on my laptop, a notification suddenly appeared on the screen. "Your balance has dipped below the minimum threshold," it stated. That was peculiar. The college fund was well-stocked. 6 years of meticulous planning for Max's future. Both Claire and I had come to a consensus that it was beyond reach. There was no need to bring up that conversation again, as we both understood its significance. At least, that was my assumption. I accessed the account, anticipating the presence of an error. Perhaps an error? It seems like banks make mistakes frequently, don't they? However, that's not the case. The revelation struck me with the force of a freight train. The account held no funds. Not a low balance, not empty, but rather a stark $0, 0 cents, with no transactions to be found. I gazed at the screen, the figures searing into my vision, filled with hope and desperation. It was a jest, yet it held a deeper truth. "Claire," I called out, my voice trembling, but there was no reply. "Claire," I called out once more, my voice rising, yet the response was an overwhelming stillness. She was not at home. That's when the heavy truth began to settle in. For weeks, Claire had been behaving oddly, appearing somewhat aloof and overly polished for her errands, deflecting inquiries about her whereabouts with ambiguous justifications. I attributed it to stress, life, or whatever else might be at play. I had never considered it. I picked up my phone and called her number, but it went straight to voicemail. I made another attempt, but the outcome was unchanged. My heart raced, each beat resonating in my chest like a relentless drum. Max strolled into the room, casually biting into an apple, completely unaware of the turmoil unfolding around him. "Where's Mother?" I inquired, making an effort to maintain a composed demeanor for his benefit. He nonchalantly shrugged, savoring another bite. She mentioned that she needed to head out to a different place. In a distant place. That word pierced through me, twisting like a dagger in my gut. My hands trembled as I accessed our shared credit card account. Perhaps I was reluctant to confront the truth I had long suspected, yet I found myself unable to look away. And there it was, a series of transactions unfolding. Flights, luxury hotels, exquisite dining experiences. My wife was far away, enjoying herself with funds intended for our son's future. I wished to keep my composure in front of Max, yet it proved to be quite challenging. Thoughts surged through my mind, each one demanding attention. What could have prompted her to act this way? How could she take from our son, from the one individual who was completely innocent in our struggles? Indeed, there's been some disagreement between us recently. Certainly, while there have been challenges, this act was beyond redemption. Max must have sensed the expression on my face because he approached and placed a hand on my shoulder. "It's all good, Dad." He spoke with a smile that felt unervingly serene, almost as if he held secrets within. I resolved all the issues. Back then, I believed he was merely attempting to lift my spirits. Children often lack the comprehension of the heavy burden that betrayal carries, as well as the profound nature of loss. They perceive the world in stark contrasts, distinguishing between heroes and villains, challenges and resolutions. I wished to trust his words as pure. Yet even in that moment, there was an unsettling quality to his tone, as if he possessed knowledge he was withholding. I lacked the vigor to confront him. All my attention was directed towards Claire. I attempted to call once more, but it proved to be futile. It was only later that evening, as I opened the closet and noticed her suitcase was gone, that the reality struck me with overwhelming clarity. She had no intention of returning. She had drained the account, gathered her belongings, and left her family behind. Upon me, regarding Max's frustration surged like a tide, each swell more powerful than the one before. I was filled with a deep rage towards her. I was seething with anger toward myself. How could I have overlooked the clues? How could I have allowed this to unfold right before my eyes? Each transaction, each deception, looped in my thoughts like a relentless film I was powerless to stop. Max remained silent throughout the evening, observing me with that same serene demeanor. As he settled into sleep, I remained in the shadows, reflecting on the past few months, searching for clarity. However, none existed. A vast emptiness lingered in place of trust, accompanied by a betrayal so profound it felt as though it might engulf me entirely. I wish I could claim that I discovered some clarity that night, some determination to progress, but I did not. What I uncovered was the harsh, unyielding reality. The woman I cherished had prioritized her own desires above her family, and there was no turning back from that decision. Unbeknownst to me, as I sat there engulfed in my sorrow, Max had already begun crafting a solution, one that would have never crossed my mind in my most vivid imaginings. The days that came after Claire's betrayal felt like a haze. I was hardly present, operating on instinct, overwhelmed by fury, uncertainty, and sorrow. However, Max remained composed. He appeared unsettlingly calm for a 10-year-old whose mother had just left him behind. He continued attending school, diligently completed his homework, and played with his Legos as if everything remained the same. Initially, I attributed it to the overwhelming sense of disbelief. Children handle trauma in unique ways, don't they? Yet, the reality was that Max was not overlooking the situation. He was diligently crafting it. It began with a whisper. He would be seen tapping away on his tablet with intense focus, his expression a mix of determination and concentration. He would steal a glance my way and swiftly minimize the screen, dismissing it with a nonchalant, "Just homework, Dad." At that moment, it didn't seem significant to me. After all, he had always excelled in technology, whether it was coding, gaming, or anything else related. It was his passion. Yet, there were those hushed phone calls. "Whom were you addressing?" One evening, I inquired, finding him in the kitchen with the phone held to his ear. He appeared taken aback, resembling a deer frozen in the glare of oncoming headlights. No one," he replied, pushing past and quickly exiting the room. I refrained from pressing him. I assumed he was conversing with a friend or perhaps even a school counselor. Each person navigates their sorrow in their own unique way, I reminded myself. Perhaps this was his method of dealing with it. Next came the garage. Max began to immerse himself for hours, experimenting with tools and wires. Initially, I didn't focus on it very much. I figured he was busy with one of his small engineering endeavors. He had always possessed a remarkable talent for constructing various creations. Machines, miniature aircraft, things of that nature. Yet on one particular night, my curiosity overwhelmed me. I stepped into the garage, curious about his activities, and what I discovered left me utterly stunned. A whiteboard stood adorned with intricate diagrams, complex equations, and detailed flowcharts. It resembled a scene straight from a thrilling espionage film. Beside it sat a laptop, its screen alive with lines of code cascading in a rhythmic flow. Max sat at the workbench, meticulously soldering what appeared to be a listening device. Upon spotting me, he leaped to his feet, attempting to shield the whiteboard with his petite stature. "What is going on here?" I inquired, truly perplexed. "Nothing at all, Dad. It was merely a school project," he insisted, his tone hurried and overly protective. I arched an eyebrow. A project for school? Since when has fourth grade needed monitoring devices? Max's face flushed with color, and for a brief instant, I believed he might truly reveal his secret. He shrugged and muttered, "You wouldn't understand," before gathering his tools and retreating indoors. I found myself frozen, gazing at the whiteboard, my thoughts swirling in a chaotic dance. Whatever Max was engaged in, it wasn't for academic purposes, and it wasn't merely a pastime. With each passing day, the peculiar conduct grew increasingly intense. Max began to pose unusually detailed inquiries regarding Claire's financial situation. Did she possess additional accounts? Was I aware of her passwords? Did she ever discuss offshore investments? Initially, I assumed he was merely inquisitive, but soon it became clear that he was collecting data. What is your reason for wanting to know all of this? One evening I inquired. Max merely shrugged, his gaze fixed on the screen of his tablet. There is no explanation, simply curious. Max, I stated, my tone resolute, this isn't typical. If something is troubling you, it's important to share it with me. At last, he raised his gaze, his face a mask of ambiguity. I mentioned it to you, Dad. I am in the process of making corrections. Just wait and see. That evening, slumber eluded me. The echoes of Max's words lingered in my thoughts. Addressing it? What could he possibly be implying by that? I considered facing him, seeking the truth, yet an unseen force restrained me. Perhaps it was fatigue, or perhaps it was a fleeting, illogical part of me that had faith in him. Had faith that he truly understood his craft. The following morning, I discovered him in the kitchen, engrossed in his laptop, fingers dancing across the keys. He was completely oblivious to my presence, lost in his own world. His fingers danced over the keyboard with an assurance that seemed far beyond his 10 years. Max, I whispered gently, and he halted in place. Absolutely, Dad. I felt the urge to inquire about his actions and intentions, yet the words remained trapped within me. I simply announced that breakfast was ready and then turned to leave. Reflecting on the past, I realized I ought to have challenged him more vigorously. I ought to have insisted on uncovering his intentions, yet a part of me hesitated, reluctant to face the truth. A lingering fear tugged at me, whispering of the truths that lay ahead. In the days that followed, Max's demeanor grew increasingly enigmatic. He ceased to leave his tablet without supervision. He secured the garage each time he was engaged in his tasks. He began draping a sheet over the whiteboard whenever it was not in use. Just when I began to reassure myself that everything was innocent, Claire's call came through. The sun was beginning to set when my phone buzzed to life. As I stood by the kitchen sink, my gaze drifted aimlessly out the window, grappling with the fragments of my life that needed to be reassembled. Max sat in the living room, absorbed in his tablet, as he often was. I looked at the caller ID and felt a chill run through me. Claire. Initially, I felt compelled to allow it to continue ringing. What's the reason for me to respond? What could she possibly articulate to rationalize her actions? Yet, my curiosity proved too strong, and despite my reservations, I answered the call. What is it that you desire? My tone was frigid, more cutting than I had meant it to be, yet I felt indifferent. David, she cried, her voice filled with urgency and quivering with emotion. Oh my goodness, David, I really need your assistance. Assist her? Her bold request ignited a fire within me. How can I assist you? I expelled a sharp breath. You drained our son's college savings and left with your boyfriend. What could possibly motivate me to assist you? David, please, just hear me out. She implored, her voice trembling. There seems to be an issue. Everything has gone awry. I rested against the counter, clutching the edge for support. What are you referring to? It's Derek, she uttered, her voice trembling with emotion. He has departed, simply vanished. Both his accounts and mine are currently frozen. I'm unable to reach anything, David. Silence. Now the authorities are on my trail. Her words struck me with a force. Yet it wasn't compassion that stirred within me. It was fulfillment. Chilling, yet fulfilling contentment. I was curious to know what it felt like to be left behind, helpless and alone, just as she had done to Max and me. Yet I remained quiet, allowing her to unearth her own downfall. David, please, she urged, her desperation intensifying. I'm uncertain about the situation at hand. I'm unsure about the culprit behind this, but I require your assistance. I'm stranded in New York, completely broke, without any identification or resources. Derek assured me he would handle everything, and now he's simply disappeared. He certainly seems like a real stand-up guy, I remarked with a hint of sarcasm, unable to hold back the dig. She was so engulfed in her panic that she failed to recognize it. I promise, David, I never intended for any of this to unfold. What exactly did you mean, Claire? I erupted, my frustration reaching its peak. You really took something from your own son? You really left your family for someone who obviously doesn't care about you at all? Is that what you intended to avoid? A lengthy silence lingered on the line, interrupted solely by the sound of her unsteady breaths. I made a mistake, she whispered. An error? I let out a harsh, mocking laugh. This cannot be labeled as a mistake, Claire. A decision was made, one that was self-serving and harsh, and now the consequences are yours to bear. David, please, she repeated, her voice a mere whisper. I possess nothing. I'm feeling a bit lost right now. Your presence is essential to me. Just as I was about to respond, Max stepped into the room, tablet in hand. Who was calling? He inquired, his demeanor relaxed, as though it were just another ordinary day. I picked up the receiver and softly said, It's your mom. For a fleeting instant, a shadow crossed Max's face. Yet soon after, a serene, understanding smile emerged, illuminating his features once more. Put on speaker, he instructed. Max, believe me, father. Let's put it on speaker. There was an unmistakable quality in his tone that caused me to pause. This was not a request. It was an order. For reasons I couldn't quite grasp, I found myself compelled to comply. I pressed the speaker button and placed the phone gently on the counter. Claire, I stated, my tone becoming more severe. You are currently on speakerphone. Max has arrived. A sudden gasp escaped her lips. Max, she murmured, her tone gentle. Darling, it's your mother. Save it. Max interrupted, his voice devoid of warmth and feeling. I have no interest in hearing that. Max, I beg you, she implored. I understand that I caused you pain. I recognize that I erred. However, you didn't merely err. He interjected once more, silencing her. You have let us down. You took away my future. So now you're reaching out to us for assistance. That's quite disappointing. I gazed at him, taken aback. This did not sound like the voice of a 9-year-old. This was the voice of an elder, a sage, a figure shrouded in shadows. Max, Claire whispered, her voice trembling. I am your mother. My affection for you knows no bounds. I didn't intend to. You don't love me, he stated plainly. If you truly cared, you wouldn't have walked away. You would never have taken it from me. You made your choice with Derek, and now you're facing the consequences. I have no sympathy for you. This is truly yours to claim. Max, please, she wept. I implore you. I would appreciate your assistance. He smiled then, a cold, assured grin that sent a tremor through me. Rest easy, Mom, he assured her. I have already completed that. Excuse me? She inquired, her tone tinged with uncertainty. Let's just say, he replied, his tone nearly bubbling with delight. Derek is no longer present to cause harm to anyone, and you won't either. The connection was lost. I remained rooted in place, gazing at Max, my thoughts swirling in a frenzy. What actions did you take? I murmured. He gazed at me, his eyes serene, nearly filled with pride. I already mentioned it, Dad, he said. I resolved all the issues. Upon hearing Max's words, I set everything right. I found myself caught in a whirlwind of emotions, pride, horror, and utter confusion all swirling together. My 10-year-old son, standing there with an eerie composure, had just quieted his frantic mother with a mysterious comment that left me feeling more disturbed than ever. Thoughts swirled in my head, each idea more outlandish than the one before. What actions might he have taken? He's merely a child, isn't he? Max, I stated, striving to maintain a calm tone. What do you mean by saying you resolved everything? What actions did you take? He shrugged nonchalantly, as though we were merely chatting about his math assignments. As I mentioned, Dad, Mom, and Derek are no longer a threat to us. My stomach churned, tightening into a knot. Max, this is serious business. Please provide a detailed account of your actions. He let out a weary breath, reminiscent of a caregiver tolerating a child's ceaseless inquiries, and gestured for me to join him in the living room. Very well, then. Allow me to demonstrate. We settled onto the couch, and he powered up his tablet. The display illuminated with a mesmerizing collection of graphs, financial documents, and what appeared to be lines of code. My heart raced as he began to explain, his tone steady and deliberate, reminiscent of someone delivering a well-researched presentation. Do you recall the time when Mom took all the money from my college fund? He commenced. It seemed to me that if she was able to take the money, then I should be able to reclaim it. I gazed at him, rendered mute, as he revealed a sequence of bank transactions. Indeed, the $50,000 that Claire had taken was restored to the account. Not merely idle, but restructured and engaged in a manner that left me astounded. How did you manage that? I stumbled over my words. Simple, he remarked, as though breaching bank accounts was as effortless as lacing up his sneakers. Mom had a rather lax approach to her passwords. I simply utilized the one she had stored on her phone to gain entry to her accounts. Derek's as well. He didn't possess any greater intelligence. Once I gained access, I redirected the funds to their rightful place. That's illegal, I stated, though my tone betrayed a hint of uncertainty. He gave another indifferent shrug. Taking from your child is also wrong. I found it hard to dispute that, yet my discomfort grew as he kept scrolling. The bank transfers marked only the start of the journey. Max had accomplished even more, a great deal more. Max gestured towards the screen, revealing that Derek possessed numerous accounts under his name. It appears that he has been deceiving individuals for an extended period. Illusory ventures, phantom enterprises, and similar schemes. I informed the authorities of all the details, provided them with all the proof necessary to ensure his permanent incarceration. Did you file a report against him? I inquired, my voice scarcely rising above a murmur. Indeed, I even ensured the past circled back to Mom. He added, a smirk creeping across his face that sent a shiver down my spine. She assisted him in utilizing the funds. In a sense, she is involved in the deception. Now she is under the watchful eye of the police as well. Max, are you aware of the consequences of your actions? I exclaimed, my voice elevating. This goes beyond merely recovering the funds. Your actions have placed your mother in a precarious situation. She found herself in a predicament. He retorted, his tone more cutting now. She selected Derek instead of us. She prioritized her own needs above ours. What reason do I have to feel sympathy for her? I was at a loss for words. He was indeed correct, without a doubt. Claire had deceived us in the most unforgivable manner. Yet, when those words escaped my son's lips, spoken with a chilling indifference, my heart felt a profound ache. This was more than a mere 10-year-old making a statement. This had a more sinister quality. What about Derek? I inquired, filled with apprehension about the response. Could you clarify what you mean? Is he really not going to be here anymore? Max smiled broadly. Oh, no need to be concerned. He's doing well at the moment. He simply lacks funds and has no place to conceal himself. All of his accounts were frozen by the authorities. When they finally locate him, he will have lost everything and be behind bars. The nonchalant manner in which he expressed it, as though shattering a man's existence was akin to crushing an insect, sent a chill coursing through me. Max, I inquired, selecting my words with precision, why didn't you share this with me earlier? Why didn't you allow me to take care of it? He gazed at me, his demeanor shifting to one of gentleness. Since I was aware that you wouldn't take any action, you simply allowed her to escape the consequences because of your kind nature. Someone needed to intervene, Dad. There was a need for someone to safeguard us. The sensation was as if the very earth had transformed under my feet. My son, my dear, clever child, had decided to not only remedy our predicament, but to seek retribution in a manner I could never have imagined. I found myself caught between admiration for his ingenuity and a deep unease about the implications it carried. Max, I said after a lengthy silence, I'm uncertain if this is the appropriate approach to take. He inclined his head, his serene composure remaining steadfast. Perhaps not, yet it proved effective. I reclined on the couch, my fingers gliding through my hair. I was at a loss for words, unsure of my emotions. My son accomplished what I could not. He seized a dire circumstance and transformed it entirely. Yet, what is the price to pay? Max shut his tablet and regarded me with that familiar, unsettling assurance. There's no need to be concerned, Dad, he reassured. Everything will be just fine from here on out. As I sat there, gazing at him, an unsettling sense lingered that everything was far from right. Rest eluded me following Max's revelation. In what way might I be able to? The overwhelming scale of his actions echoed in my thoughts, reminiscent of a film caught in a perpetual cycle. My son, at just 10 years old, devised a plan so elaborate and so destructive that it brought a grown man and woman to their knees. What's even more frustrating, he appeared completely devoid of any remorse regarding the situation. I promised myself I would speak to him in the morning, yet fate had different intentions. The phone rang once more, Claire. Initially, I felt compelled to dismiss it. Ultimately, what could she possibly express that would alter the situation? Yet, a tiny self-punishing fragment of my being craved the sound of her discomfort. Thus, I responded. What is happening? I snapped, disregarding any niceties. David, please, she cried softly. Your assistance would be greatly appreciated. I implore you. Her voice carried an unfamiliar quality, almost beyond recognition. The confident, self-assured woman who had gracefully exited our lives without a moment's hesitation was now a distant memory. In her stead stood an individual filled with desperation, shattered. How bold of you to call me, I remarked icily. David, pay attention, she urged, her voice spilling over in a hurried cascade. I'm being pursued by the authorities. All my accounts have been frozen. Derek has disappeared, simply gone without a trace. I have no idea where he might be. I find myself at an impasse, David. I currently lack any funds. I find myself without a destination. And who is to blame for that? I interjected, my voice elevating. David, please, she implored. I understand that I made a mistake, all right? I understand that I caused pain to you and Max, but I feel this treatment is unwarranted. I shouldn't be abandoned with nothing. I released a harsh chuckle. You drained our son's college fund, left with your boyfriend, and now you're upset because the repercussions have finally hit you? This is truly what you deserve, Claire. Every single piece of it. The stillness lingered on the line, interrupted solely by her unsteady breaths. I never imagined it would come to this, she whispered. I retorted sharply. You didn't think at all. You were too caught up in the excitement with Derek to think about what you had left behind. Well, you won't believe this, Claire. You created your own situation. Now you must face the consequences. In that moment, she broke down, her cries echoing with raw intensity. David, I'm pleading with you. I really need your help to escape this situation. I find myself without anyone else to rely on. My jaw clenched involuntarily. Is there anyone else I can rely on? The boldness of that statement ignited a fire within me. After all she had done, she had the audacity to play the victim, as if I had any obligation to her. I have nothing to offer you, I stated plainly. Please don't say that, she implored. Text. You can speak with the police and blame it all on Derek. Since your previous attempt at deception turned out so wonderfully, I interjected, interrupting her. Absolutely not, Claire. I refuse to tidy up after you any longer. David, please, she cried, her voice trembling. If not for my sake, then for Max's. Complete it for him. That was the final breaking point. Don't you even think about involving Max in this. I warned, my voice dropping to a menacing whisper. You can't act like the worried mother now. Not after everything you did to him. Your priorities have been laid out unmistakably, and they do not seem to include your family. David, I apologize, she wept. This was never my intention. I simply wish for happiness. Content, I reiterated, my tone laced with incredulity. Did you really believe that taking from your son and leaving with someone unworthy would bring you joy? Congratulations, Claire, you've achieved your goal, and now it's time to face the outcomes. A lengthy silence stretched between us, and for a brief instant, I wondered if she had disconnected the call. Yet again, she uttered words, her voice fragile and fractured. Is this truly the way things are going to unfold? She inquired, Are you really going to leave me like this? The sheer irony of her words nearly brought a chuckle to my lips. You left us first, I stated plainly. Rest assured, Claire, I am not leaving you behind. I'm simply allowing you to handle the situation you've caused. Farewell. I ended the call before she had the chance to utter another syllable. As I pivoted, Max filled the doorway, his gaze fixed on me, exuding that familiar calm, analytical demeanor. You didn't give her a free pass, did you? He inquired. No, I replied, my voice thick with fatigue. I did not. He nodded, as though that was the sole response that could be deemed appropriate. Excellent. She is not worthy of our assistance. I felt compelled to express that the situation was far more complex, that despite my deep-seated resentment towards Claire for her actions, a fragment of my conscience wrestled with the thought of abandoning her to navigate her own challenges. Yet, gazing at Max, at the unwavering determination reflected in his eyes, I realized he would never grasp it. Perhaps he would, and that filled me with even greater fear. Max, I said with caution, what you did, what you're currently doing, it's not typical. This isn't the way a child of 10 should be thinking. I'm not a child, he stated plainly. I found myself without a response to that. One thing I've come to understand is that individuals like Derek don't simply give in when faced with adversity. They strike back. They create a commotion. They bring down as many individuals as possible during their descent. What unfolded next was precisely that. A phone call was the beginning of it all. This time it's not from Claire. Negative. I had blocked her number. This call originated from an unfamiliar number. Despite my reservations, I answered, hoping it might be the authorities finally closing in on Derek. David, the voice rumbled from the other end. Dark, perilous, and brimming with toxicity. You believe you're quite the genius, don't you? I stood still. Derek, I repeated, my tone devoid of emotion. Shouldn't you have found a place to lay low by now? He emitted a laugh devoid of humor. Oh, indeed. I'm in seclusion, that's for sure. Appreciation goes to you and your mischievous little one. Do you really believe you can shatter my existence and simply move on? I cast my eyes toward the living room, where Max sat on the floor, meticulously piecing together a model car, exuding an air of tranquility as if the world around him held no sway. For a fleeting instant, I contemplated the idea of feigning ignorance, pretending I knew nothing at all. But what was the purpose? Derek was already aware. You received the outcome you earned, I remarked, maintaining a steady tone. You took from my family. Did you really believe there would be no repercussions? You're unaware of the force you're up against, he growled. Do you really believe this is the end? The journey continues. Far from it. What will you do, Derek? I inquired, my patience fraying at the edges. You find yourself without funds. Your presence is requested. Your work is complete. Perhaps, he remarked, his tone eerily composed. But I refuse to face this alone. I am aware of your residence, David. I am aware of the school your son attends. And if you believe I'll simply sit back and allow you to destroy me, you're sorely mistaken. Chills coursed through my veins. He was serious. Derek embodied a multitude of traits. A deceiver, a swindler, a coward. However, he was not the sort of individual to issue hollow threats. Keep your distance from my son, I warned, my voice trembling despite my attempts to remain composed. Or what? He jeered. Are you planning to unleash your little hacker on me once more? Proceed. Let's see how far he got. I hung up before he could utter another word. My hand shook as I placed the phone on the counter. For a brief moment, I found myself frozen in place, gazing at it, attempting to comprehend the events that had just unfolded. Who might that be? Max inquired, his tone surprisingly serene. Derek, I remarked, pivoting to meet his gaze. He is aware of your actions. Now he's making threats against us. Max remained completely unfazed. He expressed, let him get a shot. His tone was so frigid it sent a chill racing down my spine. Max, this isn't a game, I said, lowering myself to his level. This individual poses a significant threat. It is imperative that we contact law enforcement. No, Max interjected, his tone resolute. The authorities remain inactive until the moment has passed. However, I'm more than capable of managing this. Max, Dad, he interrupted, cutting me off once more. Believe me, I can handle this. I felt compelled to express my thoughts, to convey that this burden was far too heavy for a 10-year-old to bear, that it shouldn't fall upon him to safeguard us. Yet, the gaze in his eyes held me back. The expression didn't resemble that of a frightened child. It was the gaze of a person who had firmly settled his decision. That evening, Max slipped away into the garage once more, securing the door with a firm lock behind him. I lacked the strength to intervene. I lingered in the living room, pacing back and forth as Derek's words echoed repeatedly in my mind. Each sound from outside startled me. Each shadow loomed ominously, as if it harbored a hidden menace. It was well after midnight when Max finally made his appearance. He appeared weary yet content, a faint smile playing at the edges of his mouth. "It is complete," he stated plainly. "What has been accomplished?" I inquired, a sense of unease settling in my gut. He passed me his tablet, and a wave of dread washed over me as I scanned the screen. He had pinpointed Derek's whereabouts through a sophisticated GPS manipulation tool. Moreover, he had infiltrated Derek's burner phone, capturing every menacing message that had been dispatched. And then, as if that weren't enough, Max had forwarded an anonymous tip to the authorities, complete with all the evidence necessary to apprehend Derek. "Max," I exclaimed, my voice filled with wonder and incredulity, "are you aware of the implications of your actions?" I halted him, he stated with certainty. "He poses no threat to us anymore." I longed to trust him. I hoped this was the conclusion, that Derek would be apprehended, and we could finally find peace. Yet beneath the surface, I was aware of the truth. Individuals like Derek are not ones to surrender easily. As expected, the following morning greeted me with the sight of a brick lodged in our front window. A note was affixed to it, written in a hasty, furious script. "This is far from finished." Before I had the chance, Max discovered it. He glanced at it, crushed it in his hand, and discarded it silently into the bin. "Max," I suggested with a hint of hesitation, "perhaps it's best if we head out. Find a secure place to wait until this situation resolves." He gazed at me, his demeanor serene and composed. "There's no need for us to hurry, Dad. There's just one final move left for me to execute." I gazed at him, my heart racing. "What do you mean by one more move?" He smiled then, a subtle, unsettling smile that sent a shiver down my spine. "Just wait and see." The discomfort lingered, a shadow cast by Max's words. "You'll find out soon enough." He spoke with such nonchalance, such assurance, as if the turmoil that had engulfed our existence was merely a challenge he was resolutely set on conquering. However, this was far from a game. This isn't suited for my taste. Not after I had spent the night picking up shards of glass and covering the broken window with cardboard, pondering whether Derek would arrive next with something even more menacing than a brick. The following 2 days unfolded in a heavy, charged quiet. Max carried on with his usual routine, seemingly unaffected, yet I sensed the wheels of his mind were in motion. I refrained from inquiring about his intentions. A part of me wished to remain unaware. I thought that if I kept my distance, perhaps, just perhaps, I could convince myself that my 10-year-old wasn't orchestrating a conflict with an adult criminal. And then it occurred. The sun was beginning to dip below the horizon when the doorbell chimed. My stomach dropped. No visitors had graced my doorstep for days, not since the incident with the brick, and I held no hope for any arrival. Max lifted his gaze from the tablet, his expression a mystery. "Don't answer it," I said instinctively, my voice barely above a whisper. Max remained silent. He rose from his seat, approached the door, and glanced through the peephole. Without a moment's pause, he turned the lock and flung the door wide. There he stood, imposing and seething with fury, a figure that commanded attention. Derek. His face contorted in rage, his eyes gleaming with a frenzied intensity. He appeared as a mere echo of the self-assured, poised individual captured in the vintage photographs alongside Claire. This Derek appeared both frantic and menacing. Where could he be? Derek snarled, entering the threshold uninvited. I stepped into his way, my heart racing. "You must go," I insisted, striving to maintain a calm tone. Derek scoffed. "Oh, I'm here to stay. Not until your little one clarifies how he turned my life upside down." To my dismay, Max took a step forward. He exuded a sense of tranquility, bordering on indifference, as he folded his arms and gazed upward at Derek. "You accomplished that entirely on your own," Max remarked with a steady tone. Derek's jaw tightened. "Hear me out, you small. You're out of money," Max interjected, his voice piercing and incisive. "You're being pursued in 3 states, and now you've come here, menacing both me and my father. Wise decision. I reached for Max, hoping to draw him back, but he brushed my hand away. "Max, halt," I whispered sharply. Yet Max persisted. He moved nearer to Derek, his tone unwavering and frigid. "This was not the place for you to be. You're only complicating matters for yourself." Derek erupted in a hearty laugh. "More unfavorable? Listen, I've reached a point where there's absolutely nothing holding me back." "That's where you're mistaken," Max remarked, a subtle, unsettling smile playing on his lips. Before I could fully grasp the situation, Max dug into his pocket and retrieved a small device, something unfamiliar to me. With a decisive press of a button, Derek felt his phone vibrate unexpectedly in his pocket. Derek scowled, extracting it to reveal a cascade of files appearing on the display. "What on earth is this?" Derek insisted. "Evidence," Max stated plainly. Derek's gaze darted across the screen, his face transforming from bewilderment to concern. "You mischievous little..." "Evidence of your danger," Max interjected, interrupting him. "With each message you've dispatched, every call you've initiated, and every threat you've uttered, you've created a path, and now the authorities possess it." Derek's face flushed with color. "You're just pretending." Max inclined his head slightly. "Could it be that I am?" At that instant, it became clear to me what Max had accomplished. He had been meticulously collecting evidence. He had meticulously crafted a cunning trap. Derek's phone was alive with a flurry of documents. A live feed was being streamed directly to local law enforcement. Max had cleverly transformed Derek's own menacing words into the very cause of his ruin. Derek surged ahead, his expression twisted in fury. Yet, just as he was about to move forward, the piercing wail of sirens erupted around him. Max remained unfazed. "That will be for you," he stated with a serene demeanor. Derek stood still, his gaze flickering to the window. The vibrant blue and red lights signaled the truth. He glanced back at Max, his expression a turbulent blend of rage and fear. "This isn't finished," he spat. "Indeed, it is," Max responded, his tone icy and conclusive. The door flew open, and the officers stormed in, weapons at the ready. Derek yielded without a fight. He understood that it had come to an end. As they dragged him away, I remained frozen in disbelief, struggling to comprehend the whirlwind of events that had just unfolded. Max faced me, his expression a mystery. He spoke softly. I mentioned I had one more move. "Max," I uttered, my voice trembling. "Can you even comprehend the level of danger involved in that situation? He had the potential to cause you harm. He had the potential to cause harm to both of us. However, he did not," Max remarked, his tone straightforward. "And now he has departed." I felt an overwhelming urge to shout at him, to insist on answers, to convey that this was far from normal, that this was absolutely unacceptable. Yet, there I stood, captivated by the sight of the boy who had just deftly outsmarted a seasoned criminal. Max gazed at me, his eyes serene yet weary. "It's finished now, Dad. We are secure." As I lingered there, observing the police car fade into the distance, an unsettling sense of insecurity clung to me, refusing to let go. The silence in the house was unsettling following Derek's arrest. The tumult, the menaces, the persistent dread. Everything appeared to vanish in a heartbeat. Yet the silence offered no solace. The atmosphere was dense, oppressive, and brimming with unvoiced inquiries. Inquiries I found myself hesitant to seek answers for. I believed that was the conclusion of the matter. With Derek gone and Max returning to his everyday life, I could finally concentrate on piecing together the fragments of our family. Then, Claire made the call. Once more, the number was instantly familiar to me. I had cut off her primary means of communication. It seemed she discovered an alternative route to reach me. I thought about overlooking it. What else could she possibly express? Yet, the allure of curiosity prevailed. I had to experience it firsthand. "What comes next, Claire?" I stated, my voice as frigid as the depths of winter. Her voice was faint and raspy, reminiscent of someone who had endured sleepless nights. "David," she started, yet her words wavered. "I don't have time for your tales of woe," I retorted. If you're reaching out to plead for financial help or absolution, you're simply wasting your time. I don't want your money, she said softly. I do not. I'm uncertain about my desires. That took me by surprise. For the first time since this nightmare began, her tone was stripped of arrogance and entitlement, revealing only raw, unfiltered defeat. So what brings you to call? I insisted. I'm in a bit of a predicament, David, she confessed. Genuine difficulty. Text. Oh really? I said with a hint of sarcasm. She brushed off my remark. The authorities are looking into my situation. They believe I was involved in Derek's schemes. Were you not? I inquired, allowing the charge to linger in the atmosphere. She paused, uncertainty flickering in her eyes. At first, I had no idea what he was up to, she admitted, her voice quaking. However, by the moment I grasped the situation, it had already passed me by. I found myself bound to it all. What comes next? They are currently freezing my accounts and taking my assets. I possess nothing, David. Silence prevails. We share that sentiment. I retorted. Did you overlook the fact that you depleted Max's college fund to support your little escapade? Text. I was foolish, she confessed, her voice trembling. I pondered. I believed Derek had feelings for me. I believed he would look after me. I released a harsh chuckle. So, how's that going for you? There was no response from her. The quiet on the other end conveyed so much. What's the reason for your call, Claire? I inquired once more, this time with a gentler tone, yet still resolute. You're all I have left, she whispered softly. Max and you. Her words struck me with the force of a blow to the stomach. Not due to their influence over me. No, quite the opposite. However, due to their extreme misconceptions. I stated with conviction, you don't have us. The moment you chose Derek over your family, you lost us. David, please, she implored, her voice trembling. I erred. I realized I made a mistake. Yet, I remain Max's mother. A second chance is what I seek. Opportunity for redemption? I said again, in disbelief. Claire, this is not just a trivial mistake. You took from your own child. You left him for someone you hardly knew. Now that your idealized dream has shattered, do you seek to return? Absolutely not. Definitely not. Her cries echoed through the phone. Yet I remained steadfast. I was unable to. David, I have nowhere else to turn, she said, her voice thick with urgency. That's not my concern. I responded with a chill in my voice. What is the situation with Max? She inquired, her voice quivering. Shouldn't he have the opportunity to have his mother by his side? Max doesn't require your presence, I stated matter-of-factly. In just the last 2 weeks, he's contributed more to this family than you ever have. And he has accomplished it in your absence. We can manage without you, Claire. Not any longer. The connection fell quiet. For a brief instant, I believed she had disconnected the call. Yet, when she finally spoke, her voice was scarcely more than a whisper. Is that all there is? She inquired. Are you really going to abandon me like this? I released a harsh chuckle. You were the one who walked away from us first. Now you are facing the consequences of your actions. There was no reply from her. I detected her breath, trembling and irregular. Suddenly, the call was cut off. As I pivoted, Max stood in the doorway, observing me with that familiar, serene expression he consistently maintained. Could that be Mom? He inquired. I gave a slight nod. What was it that she desired? I stated it plainly, to return. Max remained unperturbed. Did you inform her of your decision not to proceed? I certainly did. He nodded, content with the outcome. Excellent. She should not be allowed to return. I wanted to convey that it wasn't merely straightforward, that forgiveness was meant to be an integral part of the journey. Yet, as I gazed at him, so poised and confident, I found myself unable to utter the words. Perhaps he had a point. Perhaps certain actions truly crossed a line that could never be erased. In the days that followed, I found myself unable to stop revisiting every action Max had taken, every detail he had meticulously arranged. One couldn't help but be in awe of his extraordinary intellect. A 10-year-old succeeded in outsmarting adults, unraveling a criminal operation, and rescuing his family from disaster, all while maintaining an unsettling calmness. It was truly remarkable, without a question. Yet, it was equally daunting. Max exhibited behaviors that set him apart from other children. He faced situations with unwavering confidence and decisiveness. Rather, he meticulously calculated, devised strategies, and executed with flawless precision. It felt like each choice he made was a move in an elaborate game of strategy that existed solely in his mind. Though I acknowledged the impact of his actions, I couldn't overlook the chill that accompanied them. One evening, while I lounged on the couch, my gaze fixed on the cardboard covering the window, Max entered the room. He possessed that familiar, serene, assured demeanor he consistently displayed. Yet, there was an unusual quality to his gaze. "A weightier matter, Dad," he said, taking a seat next to me. "Are you upset with me?" The inquiry took me by surprise. "Upset with you? For what purpose?" "For all that I accomplished," he remarked with simplicity. "In pursuit of Mom and Derek. For failing to inform you." I let out a deep breath, my fingers tangling in my hair. Where do I even start with that question? "Max," I began with caution. "Your actions. A 10-year-old should never have to face such a burden. No one should ever be put in that position. Yet I accomplished it," he stated, his voice unwavering. "And it succeeded. I conceded that it did. However, it's not solely about the outcome. It's about the significance." His brow furrowed. "Could you clarify what you mean?" I paused, sifting through my thoughts for the perfect expression. "Max, your approach to the situation was remarkable. It was far from ordinary. It lacked wellness. There's no need to approach things in that manner or behave in such a way. You're merely a child." His demeanor remained unchanged. "I accomplished what was necessary. If I hadn't intervened, who would have put a stop to them?" I felt compelled to engage in a debate, to convey that it wasn't his duty. I ought to have been the one to take care of it. Yet, beneath the surface, I understood he was correct. Anger and grief had left me feeling utterly immobilized, overwhelmed by my own suffering to take action. Max took the initiative since I had not, and that understanding pierced more profoundly than anything else. After a lengthy silence, I remarked, "You're quite clever, Max. More intelligent than I could ever aspire to be. Yet you're still my son. It is my duty to ensure your safety. It should be the opposite." He gazed at me, then his eyes probing into mine. "But what happens if you're unable to?" He inquired gently. "What if the responsibility lies with me?" I found myself without a response. How might I, when the proof was right before my eyes? Max had shielded us. He was our savior. What is the price? In the weeks that ensued, life gradually started to regain its usual rhythm, or at least as typical as it might be. Derek found himself confined within the cold, unyielding walls of a cell. Then Claire fell quiet, probably too entangled in her own legal issues to pay us any mind now. Silence enveloped the house, tranquil and serene. Yet that tranquility seemed delicate as a fragile pain, poised to break with the faintest caress. One afternoon, I stumbled upon Max in the garage, experimenting with a fresh endeavor. A drone it was, elegant and crafted with precision, with wires and circuits arranged in flawless precision. He raised his gaze as I stepped inside, presenting a gentle smile. "Hey, Dad," he said. "Hello there." I rested against the threshold, observing his craft. "It seems like you're constantly creating something, don't you think?" He merely shrugged his shoulders. "I find it quite enjoyable. It occupies my thoughts. That's a positive development," I remarked thoughtfully. "However, Max, it's not necessary to constantly be in repair mode. At times, allowing things to simply exist is perfectly acceptable." He took his time before replying. Instead, he concentrated on joining a delicate wire with precision. His hands were unwavering and meticulous. At last, when he found his voice, it was soft and subdued. "I'm unsure about how to approach that. Could you clarify what you mean?" He placed the soldering iron aside and turned his gaze toward me. His expression was grave. "I struggle to simply allow things to unfold as they are. If something is broken, I must repair it. When a challenge arises, I must find a solution. That's simply my perspective." I wished to convey to him that he need not bear that weight. It wasn't his duty to resolve every issue. Yet, I was aware of the truth. Max stood apart from the other kids. He perceived the world through a unique lens. No words of comfort from me could alter that reality. "You've got a remarkable talent, Max," I said at last. "Yet, it carries a weight of obligation. You will need to determine the best way to utilize it, and whom to place your trust in." He gave a slight nod. His eyes were filled with contemplation. "I understand." I observed him for a moment longer. A tightness in my chest, a blend of pride and concern. Max was exceptional, absolutely clear. Yet, genius can often cut both ways. It has the power to create or to ruin, restore or damage. And I could only wish that, as he matured, he would decide to create. That night, as I lay in bed, I reflected on Claire's last words to me. "You nurtured a son who thrives beyond mere existence. He triumphs. Exercise caution, David. There may come a time when his heart is too frozen to be rescued." I was reluctant to accept her words, yet the idea remained. Max transcended the role of a mere survivor. He was an undeniable presence. Though I felt a swell of pride for him, an unsettling fear lingered that his unbridled brilliance could eventually steer him toward a direction I might not be able to accompany him on. For the moment, however, tranquility enveloped us. My resolve to safeguard it was unwavering for the benefit of us both.